What's going on, everybody? My name is Aryan, back at it again with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my first impressions and thoughts of the new iPhone 13 Pro. Now, a lot of people might say that this year's upgrade is a very small one. Apple should have done more. Maybe they missed a few features here and there, and in my opinion, I do agree. There's nothing really that drastically different from this year's upgrade versus last year, and realistically, if you have the iPhone 12, 12 Pro or 12 Pro Max, there really isn't that many new features to incentivize you to maybe upgrade to this year's new models. It is a very iterative upgrade, and Apple did throw in a couple of nice features here and there, and that's what we're going to be going over in this video. Before we get started in this video, make sure you guys click subscribe on this video and hit the big thumbs up button. It helps me out a lot. Without further ado, let's hop into my impressions of the iPhone 13 Pro. So the design. Looking at the iPhone 13 Pro, I got it in graphite this year. Last year I got it in Pacific Blue. Just looking at it, it is still a very beautiful piece of hardware. Apple really does know how to make a good looking phone. The design is pretty much identical to the phone last year. It is ever so slightly thicker and ever so slightly heavier. Those two things I really don't notice, especially in day-to-day use when it's in your hand. I don't really notice the weight, or I don't really notice the thickness, but it is something to note. Now, the notch on the new iPhones is, Apple says, 20% smaller. In real world use, they haven't really done anything to take advantage of that new space, so you don't really notice it. They did that by moving the earpiece right to the very top instead of kind of in the middle of the notch, and I guess that's how they found a way to shrink it up a little bit. It's not a hole punch cutout, or it's not like some of the Android phones that have a fully bezel-less design, but it is a nice little upgrade, and it's nice to see that Apple is trending towards having a fully bezel-less iPhone. In my opinion though, in day-to-day use, not really anything to write home about. If you're upgrading for the notch, I would not recommend that, because essentially it's the same front as it was before. The iPhone 13 Pro and the Pro Max do have the surgical stainless steel on the sides. While it is very premium and luxury, it does collect fingerprints like mad, so I wish they had stuck to like a matte finish like they have on the iPhone 13s and the 13 mini. The back is still that matte finish, which is nice, but it is a little bit slick, so if you're worried about that, I do suggest grabbing a case. The most striking thing about the design of the new iPhone 13 Pro, and this goes in particular for the Pro series actually, is just how giant these cameras are at the back. This camera bump is no joke. Like, it literally sticks out like a sore thumb. It almost has like 3 levels to it, where it has like the initial camera bump, and then like the metal camera ring, and then like another bump for the camera glass. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I noticed that when I put it on a table, it does raise the top of the phone quite substantially, and overall it's just a giant camera setup. So the reason for this giant notch is the upgraded cameras, which are pretty much one of the biggest features of the new iPhone 13 lineup, is the cameras. So let's talk about those for a second. The triple camera setup on the iPhone 13 Pro is now the exact same as the camera setup on the 13 Pro Max. If you remember last year on the 12 Pro had slightly worse cameras than the 12 Pro Max. So if you wanted the best of the best camera setup, you'd have to go for the bigger, bulkier, heavier iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, to some people that wasn't an issue, but to people with smaller hands or people who don't like the bigger screen size, it was not the greatest thing in the world. So that would benefit a lot of people who like the smaller size. They have the same cameras as the bigger 13 Pro Max. Now, all the cameras, the wide, ultra wide, and telephoto, are 12 megapixels each now. They all have bigger sensors with the same megapixels, so essentially it lets in more light because the megapixels themselves are larger. All the cameras now have night mode, and that's going to translate to better low light performance if you're taking pictures at night, or if you're taking pictures where the lighting conditions are not ideal. It's supposedly going to help a lot with those situations. I plan on doing a full camera test of this phone very soon, so I might be shooting a vlog and doing some camera tests on this channel, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Now, the telephoto camera on this phone is now 3x zoom versus 2.5x zoom on last year's cameras, so you do get a little bit more range if that's your thing. And where we see a big upgrade is the ultra wide. Now, the ultra wide now has an f1.8 aperture. Essentially that lets in a lot more light, so it is going to be better in low light, which is something that the iPhone 12 ultra wide did not do too well in. And this year's ultra wide is also a lot sharper and more detailed, especially on the edges. I've noticed in pictures when we were using the iPhone 12 Pro Max, his ultra wide camera, you'd have to sacrifice some quality shifting to the ultra wide from the wide, and it's really nice to see that Apple is now closing the gap between its regular wide camera and the ultra wide. Another really cool thing about the ultra wide camera is that it has macro capabilities now, so that means you can get those really super close detailed shots of those small and intricate objects. You can do that now on the iPhone 13 Pros. You can't do them on the iPhone 13s. Only the Pro line has the macro capabilities for the ultra wide camera. Now, cinematic mode. That's the other feature that everybody was talking a lot about. Essentially, this is like portrait mode for video. So Apple is really trying to get people to use these video cameras to make movies, content creation, all that sort of stuff. So they're really going for that really nice, cinematic, expensive camera look. So what the biggest feature that Apple highlighted on stage in their keynote about cinematic mode was focus racking. So essentially, the iPhone now can shift focus seamlessly between things in the foreground and the background, and it can do it intelligently. So let's say I'm in the foreground and I look over and somebody's in the background. The iPhone camera will know now to shift focus of the person at the back versus the person at the front. It's actually a cool feature. How well that works, I still want to test out a little bit more, and like I said, I'm going to be shooting a full video on the iPhone 13 Pro's cameras, so you guys make sure stay tuned for that, for a full look at how good cinematic mode is and how good the video is from the 13 Pro. Now, one little caveat to cinematic mode is that it's stuck at 1080p at 30 frames per second, so no 4K in cinematic mode, and you don't get to choose between 60 frames per second or 24. You're locked at that frame rate. Not the biggest deal in the world. Obviously, that's probably super taxing on the iPhone's processor and battery, so I get it, but it would have been nice to see cinematic mode work in 4K. Now, the other video features are pretty much the same too as the iPhones from last year, except now we actually do get ProRes video recording. So ProRes is kind of like the industry standard as a codec for video editing. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, this feature probably won't apply to you too much, but for the people who do care, the iPhone now can record in ProRes. But one little caveat to that is that if you do get the 128 gigabyte iPhone, you won't be able to record in ProRes because it's for the 256 gigabyte models and higher. Now, the last feature, and my favorite feature by far, is the new ProMotion display. So the iPhone display is pretty much the same quality and a little bit brighter than it was last year, but what's changed is the refresh rate. The iPhone 13 Pro and the 13 Pro Max now refresh at 120 Hz versus 60 Hz from last year, and the iPhone 13s are still stuck at 60 Hz. To be honest, this is something that you really have to use the phone and experience yourself to really understand what it is. Scrolling through your apps, notifications, pretty much everything that you do when you're touching the phone is super fluid and really responsive. Even just playing with this phone for like 5 minutes and then going to my old phone, you can really notice the difference. Honestly, the best thing that I would describe this as is just very fluid. To me, this is the biggest distinguishing factor between the 13 lineup and the 13 Pro lineup. So if you do care about having the nicest refresh rate, definitely go for the 13 Pro versus the 13. But before making a decision on if you think that ProMotion is worth it, I'd recommend going to the Apple Store, trying it out for yourself, because some people are going to love it, some people might not want to spend the extra money on it. In my personal experience, I love it. The ProMotion itself is a reason for me personally to upgrade to the 13 Pro versus the regular 13. Overall, I really do like the new iPhone 13 Pro. I'm still deciding on if I want to keep this iPhone 13 Pro or I want to go up to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm a little bit of in a conundrum because I really like the bigger screen size, but this size is really nice in the hand as well. I've been using this phone for about a day now, and it's not the biggest difference, like I said, from last year. I haven't found anything groundbreakingly amazing except for the ProMotion display. Whether that's worth upgrading to you is really personal opinion. I would say if you're coming from anything other than an iPhone 12 or 12 Pro, the upgrade will be really nice. If you're coming from the 12 Pro or the 12 Pro Max, it might be unjustifiable. Maybe wait 1 year, maybe wait till next year and see what Apple has for that. But in general, if you do pick up this phone, you definitely won't be disappointed. So that's going to do it for me in this video. Thank you for watching. Like I said, I'm going to have a lot more content, especially covering the camera on this phone. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you like this video. Hit that thumbs up button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.